Welcome to Schweitzer Drive, a podcast where we explore what goes on between the generation of electricity and the light switch. Join Dave Whitehead as he interviews the entrepreneurs, innovators, and experts who are inventing the future of electric power.
Hi, I'm Dave Whitehead. Welcome to Schweitzer Drive. As the occurrences and magnitudes of wildfire have increased over the past few decades, so have the efforts to mitigate the threats of fires by the government, industry, utilities, and technology companies like SCL. My guest today is Josh DiLuciano, Vice President of Energy Delivery at Avista, an investor-owned utility providing electricity and gas to 770,000 customers in the Pacific Northwest. We're going to talk about Avista's wildfire resiliency plan, its grid hardening efforts, and the technologies the company is leveraging to mitigate wildfire risk. In his current role, Josh oversees electric and natural gas engineering, operations, and shared services such as fleet facilities and supply chain. He joined Avista in 2006 as an entry-level engineer and has held a variety of technical engineering roles and leadership positions in engineering, gas operations, and electrical operations. Josh is a U.S. Navy veteran and received his Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from Washington State University, Go Cougs, and his Master of Science and Management and Leadership from Western Governors University. Hi, Josh. Welcome to the show. Let's jump right into this.
Sounds good.
All right. How did you get involved in the electric power industry, and can you provide an overview of your role at Avista?
Yeah, sure. I kind of always was a little bit of a nerd and a techie guy. And so when I was in high school, I wanted to be an engineer, wasn't sure what I was going to do. And as you mentioned, I was in the Navy, and that was like, okay, what kind of an engineer did I want to be? And I always thought I was going to work on planes. And then when I was in the Navy, I worked on RF systems. I was like, I'm going to be an RF engineer. And then when I got to WSU, I took my first power class, and I said, that's the space I want to be in.
Who's the professor?
Pat Pedro.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Great professor.
Yeah. And, for me, I just looked at the impact that power has on the modern world, and I said, everybody needs it. It's super valuable and important for us. So that's a space I wanted to work in. So that's the path I went down. And when I graduated, I had the great opportunity to come to Avista as a distribution engineer and did some protection studies and learned about how the world worked and moved up in the org over time. Now I have the engineering operations for all of Avista. So gas and electric, like you mentioned, fleet facility and supply chain. And Avista serves customers Washington, Idaho, and Oregon. So we're pretty geographically diverse and lots of different demands and needs depending on where we're going. So every day is a little bit different, but it's always fun and interesting when I show up to work.
And don't you guys have an operation in Alaska too?
We do. I don't have involvement with that.
Okay.
We bought a utility up there a few years ago, AELNP. Great little utility up there, ran by Alec, and it's a good spot, but they are pretty self-sufficient.
Okay. Do you ever get to go visit them?
Not yet. The team was there up there this week. Alec comes down once a year, so it's always nice to chat with them, but I haven't been up there to see their properties, and they're really unique because they're an island, and how they generate and transmit power is super cool.
Yeah, I bet it is. I was thinking about that. It is a really small power system last time I saw the map of their service area. Let's talk about wildfires. Will you talk about Avista's wildfire resiliency plan and highlight some of the projects you are working on related to those wildfire risks?
Yeah. So this really changed for us. Probably 4 years ago, we established the resiliency plan, and we took a lot of what we were already doing and modified it and then added some new elements. So the parts of our plan is grid hardening. So we've done grid hardening as long as I've been at the company.
And how do you guys define grid hardening?
Yeah, great question. So, in the past, it was a lot of just bigger, stouter poles, fiberglass cross arms, different connection and connectors. And when we changed for wildfire, we looked at the causes of fire and changed some of the hardening. So an example is how we connect on the distribution lines. We used to use hot taps. They're prone to break. Mm-hmm. Bad. So we went to a saddle clamp instead. So we looked at different elements of our framing and construction and said, those are riskier than others. Let's harden in a new way. Fiberglass cross arms, pole fires. I don't know if you guys get to talk about pole fires, but when I was a new engineer, I thought people were pulling my leg. A pole fire happens when it rains. I'm like, it's wet, no fires. Tracking, right? So arcs and tracks causes a fire. It's an issue. So we had to add fiberglass cross arms, reduces pole fires, things like that. So we really changed how we frame and we construct in our fire areas, and we programmatically go through our system. And so, not us, somebody else created a really cool acronym, WUI.
What's WUI?
Yeah, see, that's what we all say. Is like,
I thought that was the things your college kids did, right, to get some discount on their tuition.
Yeah, the interstate tuition. So the WUI is a wildland urban interface. And so that's the definition of when you're going from a community to kind of rural spread, and they rank it. And so we really focus our hardening efforts in those WUI tiers where it's starting to get more vegetation and just enough houses, there's risk there. So we tier our whole system based on that special acronym.
What city's just north of Spokane?
Deer Park.
Yeah, is that Deer Park area part of that area then too? It's kind of...
Normally that's the way I looked at it too. I was like, okay, rural, but even around Spokane, it happens really quickly. So around Spokane, when you go south and get into the bigger parks and city parks there, that's a WUI tier. North Spokane, there's some WUI tiers. So it's really fascinating how quickly it can occur at a city fringe.
So there's speaking of hardening, that if you talk to some of the folks, say down at PG&E, when they talk about hardening, right, they want to bury distribution cables. Have you guys done the math on that? And what do you conclude?
So we have done the math, and we are starting that process. So we have, based on those risks on our WUI tiers, we are exploring undergrounding and covered conductor this year. And so this year we're going to underground 18 miles just to learn the process and what it takes to do that. And then we're going to apply covered conductor in areas where it makes sense as well. So dollars per mile, it's the most expensive mitigation, but in the right areas, it's the most valuable mitigation. And that's how we're approaching it, is those key areas that we really want to mitigate risk.
And do you have like miles or something like that identified as these are a high risk, it's going to cost this much, we're going to do, 10 miles, 20 miles, 100 miles? Yeah,
so our goal is probably going to be around 40 to 50 miles a year for probably 10 to 15 years, just based on those risk areas.
And would that be in the WUI areas? Or okay.
Yeah, that's pretty a big focus of it is those WUI tiered areas. The other areas that we have for our wildfire mitigation is veg management. Avista has been doing veg management as long as I've been at the company, but our forest health has changed over the last several years. So our dead, dying, and diseased trees is a more issue. So every year we're inspecting all of our distribution system and mitigating any of those trees. We have situational awareness. We have new devices. Last year we installed AI cameras, so they can detect smoke on the horizon and alert us, say, hey, there's an incident, and we can get first responders in there quicker.
Have those systems operated?
Yes.
Successfully?
Yeah. Last year, up just west of Spokane, up in our Davenport area, it picked up the smoke well before anybody else called it in. We got Department of Natural Resources out there, and they were able to keep the fire from growing just because of that early alert.
Wow.
If you have enough of those cameras, they can triangulate and give you exact distances. And then we can also overlay our infrastructure to say, is it by our equipment? Do we need to be worried for those sorts of things? So they're a pretty powerful tool. The other thing from situational awareness this year we're adding is weather stations. So normally, for as long as I've been at the company, we've had one weather station we tracked, but our service territory is so geographically dispersed and there's microclimates. We need to know what wind is doing and humidity is doing in those different areas. So we'll have 51 weather stations online by the end of this summer too.
And do you have a climatologist on staff?
With this service, we're going to get that for now. But I think as we get that weather data, the lesson learned has been once you get enough weather data, you need to have your own climatologist to understand it, process it, and make recommendations. Where should you do the undergrounding? Where does it make sense? So it'll come together in the future on that one.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. And the last area that we have is our operational and response. And so we really try to partner with communities. So this is partner time in our territory. I was just in our office here locally, and all of our pamphlets and packets are on the desk because we're going to be talking to wildland firefighters, communities, just talking about what this year looks like from us and what we're going to be doing so they can do readiness too. So wildfires, they're caused, they occur, community impacts are drastic, and they need to be ready for it too. And how do they respond?
Ooh, let's take a little tangent. What are you going to tell these folks?
Yeah. So a lot of them, we tell them is the most important thing. I was with a meeting with the Spokane fire chief a couple of weeks ago is we need your information. Like emergency management needs your phone number and your utility needs your number. We need to be able to call you when something's going on. And then readiness. So, if a power outage occurs, whether it's fire or other related, how ready will you be? Do you have water and backup? Do you have a safe place to go? Do you have a plan? That was a lesson learned. I live in Medical Lake, Washington, and we had a wildfire a couple years ago. And when that happens, if you don't have a plan, you're kind of in panic mode. What do I grab? What do I need to have ready to go? And so we try to help communities do that readiness around before it happens. So in the moment, they're not panicked.
Do you guys have a go bag now at your house?
We have a plan and a list of all the things that's going and the stuff we're going to have to be okay with staying behind.
Yeah. Well, having a list, right? Being ready is way better than trying to get ready during the middle of a crisis. vegetation management, just going back to that real quick. So you guys will go through and clear out the brush on the right of way you have for your lines. But you also mentioned the forests are dying, right? Are we doing a good job? So you could clear out your way, but you look left or right, and that it's just a tinderbox sitting on either side of your right of way. Is that a challenge for you guys, or?
It is, and it really depends on the property owner. So our lines go through privately owned lands and public owned lands, and everybody's approach is a little bit different. So we have a veg management program. Ben leads that, and he's really good at those partnerships and those conversations around risk and what we need to deal with. So we do try to get those trees outside of the right of way that could fall into our lines and mitigate them, but we can't always do that. And so we just need to have awareness and know that they're out there so we can respond.
Is one better than the other? Private owned land, keeping their land clean, or
it's a mix.
Government? Really?
It really is a mix. It depends on the partnerships and each individual's philosophy. They all have different philosophies on what they want in those situations. And so just really working with them around that. With communities, it's great is we can do partnerships in urban environments around replacing trees, right trees. So if trees continue to grow up into our lines, they look beautiful when they're young, but when they start getting into the lines every 3 to 5 years and we keep cutting off the tops, that's not great. So, hey, we'll cut that down and give you a tree that won't grow too big. So there's great opportunities to partner with people to do it better.
I would appreciate the person that has that job trying to convince somebody to tear down their tree and put in something else. I bet there's a lot of emotions that happen in those discussions.
Yeah. And the other hard thing around that is the customer owns the tree. So we can get permission to cut down the tree, but for the longest time, we didn't have permission to take the tree. And so a lot of times you're like, you cut down the tree, you take the tree. And we're like, well, sorry, it's your tree. And so we're working a lot of that too. So if we cut down your tree, can we take possession of the tree so we can get rid of the tree for you? But a lot of times that's been a challenge in the past.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make me upset if you cut my tree down and then you didn't take away the mess.
You have a weekend project. You got a bunch of branches and some firewood to trim and chop up. There you go.
It's a part of my health plan, I guess, or something like that.
Keep you active.
Yeah, it would. One tool utilities are using when wildfire risk is high is what's referred to as Public Safety Power Shutoff, or PSPS. Can you talk about Avista's experience with power shutoffs? And I think last year was the first year you actually utilized that strategy, and how'd that go?
Yeah, that last year was the first year we had to do it. So, stepping back, for us, it's the tool of last resort. So we have a wildfire resiliency plan, and we have those 4 elements. So we're working the plan, doing those things. Even with all the hardening and the situational awareness, there will be times where there's going to be such a risk that a fire could occur. And as a utility, I'm looking around your room, and I've gone to lots of Schweitzer events. Reliability has been utility's motto as long as I've been around, right? Reliability, number one. And so we really now in this modern day and age have to balance reliability risk, the risk of not having power, with a fire risk. And if the fire risk becomes greater than the reliability risk, then we need to make that decision to prevent the fire. And so that's really what this is about, is trying to transition that risk from one to the other, and make sure we're managing it appropriately. So we have part of our situational awareness, we have a wildfire dashboard. So really smart engineers who like doing data analytics looked at WUI areas, our infrastructure, historical outages, and weather conditions, and said, these are areas that are more risky than others. So if the weather conditions get windy enough and dry enough, we probably would go down this path of a PSPS, because the wildfire risk is bigger than that reliability risk, which is hard.
Yeah, I've talked to some other engineers at other utilities, and you mentioned that this switch, I think, between reliability used to be the most important thing an engineer to a power or at a power company could do, and now it's just do not cause a fire, right? At whatever cost it might be. So it's really an interesting change. If I was in a particular area with where PSPS, would I know ahead of time I'm in is like Pullman a PSPS candidate?
Yeah. So around our PSPS planning, we have a goal. So I'll share it back. So last year when we did do our PSPS, we during the summer, actually year round for me, the most important email I get every week is the weather forecast. Mm-hmm. Monday, when the National Weather Service sends an email, I check that to see what are we going to experience. But weather changes quickly. And so in the Northwest, in our area, cold fronts. So if you know the temperatures are dropping, that means humidity is going to drop and winds are going to pick up. So that's the days we watch for. So last year when we did that PSPS, our plan was always, we would tell you a week in advance. Dear Pullman, winds are going to pick up later in the week. We think we might have to elevate risk. That event happened. I went to bed on Friday night and everything looked fine. And I woke up at 6 to a call saying, it's happening. the conditions have changed that much overnight. So our goal is to give communities awareness a week in advance, 5 days in advance, 24 hours in advance. But weather changes so drastically during the summer, we ran out of that runway. And then it was like, how quickly can we tell people who are going to be impacted something's happening?
How is that decision made at Avista?
Yeah, so we made it, the way we did it is we documented a process. And so we had all kinds of stakeholders involved. And a lot of it is around community readiness. So one of the decision criteria is, did we communicate with firefighters, first responders in those communities? Do we have the ability to support the community with a community resource center? Do we have crews available to respond immediately? Those sorts of things. So we have this matrix of decision making, and it comes up to 4 of our officers have that kind of conversation. And so the 4 of us together have a conversation based on a recommendation from our team, and then we sign off on it and say, okay.
So it's a 4-person vote?
It's a 4-person conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, because we want to get all that context out there and talk about that risk and quantify what we think the impacts are and get that readiness. The other lesson learning coming out is just as hard as going in. Have the conditions subsided enough that it's safe to re-energize lines. But before we re-energize, we need a patrol. And what does that look like too? So I think both ends are pretty tricky, but it's a conversation with myself and a few of my peers about that risk right now, what we're facing.
Yeah. And, just to, not that I need to defend Avista, it's like, you guys make money when the power is on, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you guys wake up in the morning and say, let's just turn off the power to a part of the city or something like that. I have to imagine it is a very thoughtful discussion that happens, recognize the impact. If you turn off the lights to my house for a handful of hours, I'm not going to care. But I'm not a retirement community. I'm not a hospital. I'm not a supermarket that needs to keep refrigerators on or something like that. So it's I'm glad I don't have to make those decisions.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to get a phone call from somebody that's upset with you.
Absolutely, and to my earlier point, working in the power company, it's water, it's wastewater, it's cell towers, it's telecommunications, it's all those things. It impacts it.
You guys are the most critical of all critical, right? You don't have electricity, nothing runs.
Yeah.
What are some of the things Avista has done to harden its infrastructure to withstand these wildfires? I think you talked a little bit about the cabling and connectors and wildfire. Is there anything else we missed on?
Yeah, I think the other thing we've had, we call it the fire safety mode for a long time at the company. So this is something early on in my career I was learning about. So we've been able to elevate protection settings. And so this is right in your guys' wheelhouse in modern relays. And it's a big part of our hardening is we want to update our substations so we can do dynamic relay controls and changes based on weather conditions. So when it starts getting dry enough, we start changing how our system operates. So normally in our day-to-day operations, we allow a couple recloses on our system. That's just how we do fuse saving.
So does everybody, right?
Yeah.
That's why we put the feature in the recloser.
Yeah.
So
and then when summer comes along, our first kind of escalation on that area is that we no longer do 2 recloses, we just do 1. And then if it locks out, it locks out. But then as it gets heightened, we just do instantaneous tripping. And then the PSPS is now it's just off proactively. But that during the season, it can go between the one shot and the instantaneous tripping throughout the course of the day too. So every week, in addition to looking at PSPS, we're elevating risks and settings across our system throughout the summer.
When you guys are changing your various modes, where it's just I'm in standard mode and 2 shots or however many you're going to do, down to we're just going to go on instantaneous current and we'll go to lockout right there. Are you changing actually setting groups, or are you just sending in relay word bits to enable or disable particular functions in a single setting group? Yeah.
So the way I understand it, I think we're changing relay setting groups where we can remotely.
Yep.
And where we can't, we have somebody go out and do that. And then we still have dumb relays out there. I'm apologizing.
I know guys that can sell you some blue boxes.
Yeah. So in those cases, we have to go out and do some manual changes on those ones, and they stay in that mode during the summer. But a lot of it's just that being able to do it remotely. From our system operations, and that's one of our hardening goals. So that investment we're making is we want to get SCADA control to all of our substations, so we can do this dynamic changes throughout the season.
Do you guys have like a LTE system or a private LTE? Are you guys looking at that for being able to integrate?
We've looked at that. And so we've piloted it. One of our primary goals is really to get fiber to all of our stations. So if we can get fiber, that's our biggest push over.
What about down the pole then? Or down the line, excuse me.
Yeah. So, when we started this smart grid and wildfire hardening, this is something that we've talked to Schweitzer about, is we don't have end-of-line communication.
Right.
In a lot of our situations, especially in our rural situations. So not yet. We did AMI in Washington and we expanded our networks, but not still fully. So we're considering what that would look like. So when you talk about the grid hardening work, if you had the right intelligence and the communication path, you could do faster tripping and understanding where problems are at. We're just not there from the communication infrastructure today. And just highlighting, Avista is pretty rural, and that makes it hard too. Just our coverage. I was just in Pullman this morning talking to some of my crews, and they just cover, the Palouse is a pretty rural place and it's pretty flat. Cell signals don't get everywhere today.
No, they don't. As I mentioned in the intro, there are lots of people working on wildfire mitigation. How does Avista collaborate with state and local fire, land management agencies, and others in this area?
We do this regularly, and it's a big part of our collaboration and relationship. And we've done this for a few years. We have a kickoff meeting. It's probably in a few weeks where we bring in all of the local firefighting resources to one room with all of us and our ops managers just to start the conversation with them. And that goes to that earlier conversation too about how do we get ready for a PSPS. We want to make sure they're engaged and informed around that path. Another key point is that we do telephone town halls for our communities. And we started this when we did our AMI project, where we want to call all the communities every year and have a conversation on the phone with them where they can ask questions and understand, and we'll give an update on what we're doing. So we really try to do proactive communication before the season hits, so that they know what we're trying to accomplish during the summer. The partnerships with the first responders has been really valuable. Over the last couple of years, we've gotten the agreement with some of them that they could go and if we see smoke or have a trip, we send them first so that they can go respond to the fire, and then we go respond to the incident. So that quick response to smoke and fire is really important to keep wildfires at a small scale.
There has to be a lot of coordination between the first responders and you. I wouldn't want to be a firefighter going, is the line live or is it dead? Am I going to get electrocuted or not? Or?
Once a fire starts, that's an ongoing conversation we're having with them. What do they need from us? How can we help support them? Power on, power off, how long, those sorts of things.
Do you guys have a special unit that does that, or is that part of the operations center?
It really rolls up to the operations center. We'll send an ops manager or a leader to be at the incident command to work with them and relay back and forth between the two.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm always so impressed with how electric utilities react when there's an emergency. Crews from other states travel to wherever they need to help out with the crisis. And even within the utility during emergencies, it's all hands on deck. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like at Avista when these wildfires hit?
Yeah, I can talk, from a wildfire. So I have gas and electric responsibility. And down here in the Palouse a couple of years ago, we lost gas.
I was actually out of town when that happened. So
you lucked out.
My kids weren't, right? They were still in town, but I was. Yeah, I remember that event.
Yeah. So from an incident or command kind of response readiness, one of the great things about utilities, and you probably experienced this, we're very collaborative, and we have lots of partnerships and conversations around how do we respond and operate. And we have these mutual aid agreements in place. And so, similarly to looking at the weather report at the beginning of the week, when an event occurs, the first step is to say, how bad do I think it is? Do I need help? Do I have enough crews to respond to whatever's going on? And so like for a wildfire, depending on where we think damages are, it's like, okay, how many internal crews can I pull in to be ready? If I don't have enough, who can I call in the region to have them come help? And they all will come and help. The other thing was we really structured our incident command several years ago. We had the big windstorm, 2015, 2017. Mm-hmm. Lots of half of our electric customers are out, and that really ramped up our incident command structure so we can be ready. So that PSPS morning, there was 20 people in the office in the command area that we had set up, walking through these different things, making sure logistics were working and we're ready to respond around that. And crew availability is a part of our decision making.
I'm just thinking about it as I was asking the question too. Maybe wildfire is a little bit different in terms of bringing in extra crews versus, say, a windstorm. But, because my house is still standing after the windstorm. But, man, when a fire goes through, it just levels everything. There's not a lot of electricity or loads to get back on, right? Yeah. So that's an interesting...
Yeah. Part of the cruise for me now is as we watch what's going on is the patrol time. So that sensitive setting that we talked about, when that line trips out, we just can't say the wind stop. We got to go turn things back on. We have to go check all of that line to make sure nothing did get in there so we don't cause a fire afterwards. So the patrol time is an example, wanting to have that crew readiness. That Medical Lake fire, it kind of burned through the middle of town. And so the fringes were still on, needed power. So we wanted to have people on the ground right away. And so it was still smoldering, and line crews were in that zone, setting new lines, pulling in new cable. So the people that were there would have power back as soon as they could. So it's pretty amazing how quickly we can respond to get the things together that we need so that the community that is there has that energy they need to respond or to, build back up.
When you're patrolling lines for whether it's fires or after a windy situation, is it, I got to believe walking the line is the last resort. Are you using UAVs and maybe even helicopters? That's probably pretty expensive to go fly a line like that.
Yeah. So historically it was helicopters. After a big event, we'd fly it with a helicopter. But we've really advanced our drone program the last couple of years. And so we have 2 drone pilots that's their job, right? We had to call them in and say, okay, here's the sections that are hard to walk.
Are you guys hiring for that job right now?
I was going to apply. Yeah. It's really cool. As we watch how they're doing that. If you want to join me, we could be
there we go.
The drone team.
Well, you could be Goose and I could be Maverick.
There we
something.
go. Perfect. Let's do it. It's really cool to watch that, but that's another tool we're putting in the toolkit to monitor that and be able to get that quick response. And so those drones, they're amazing what they can do. They have infrared, they have LiDAR capability, giant spotlights. So we leveraged them in the first PSPS, and then we added a second drone and drone pilot. So we have that tool. So a lot of our areas we can drive, but in the rural areas, it's a walk or a flight. And we want to be able to do that quickly.
Yeah, that's really cool. What future innovations or technologies is Avista excited about to further enhance wildfire risk mitigation and system resiliency?
Yeah, so we mentioned a couple of the traditional things. This year, we continue to learn from our peers. We in the West, there's probably 5 or 6 wildfire meetings with all the peer utilities about what's going on. So the drones are as an example of watching how they're applying them differently. One of the things I'm excited about is we're calling it digital twin, right? So if you do enough inspection work with your drones, you're capturing imagery, capturing LiDAR data, you can create a digital twin of that infrastructure. And from our grid hardening perspective, if we regularly fly that, AI can start detecting the failures and the cracks and the things that human eye can't capture. So we'll be more responsive to the systems issues that we're seeing around that. I think another exciting area is just kind of the things you hinted at earlier about two-way communication. We used to really prioritize communication to just the sub, but if we had end-of-line communication, fast stripping capabilities, sectionalizing, those sorts of things would be really huge for us because we really do want to minimize the impact from wildfire, either from the advanced protection settings or from the PSPS. So the more discerning or discrete areas we can have, that's better for us.
One of the things we did with Pennsylvania Power and Light was everybody's been trying to solve the down conductor problem ever since I've been in it. It's a very, very hard one. And there's some good solutions, but it's not 100% effective, right? There's going to be some, the resistance to the ground is just too high and there's no fault current, but there is a down conductor. One of the things that we worked with PPL though is, so we have these algorithms we run in our recloser controls that are the gray boxes that hang on poles out in, distribution systems out in the farmlands and stuff like that. But PPL also installed AMI system on theirs. And so what they were doing is overlaying their AMI data with the down conductor one to verify it. So
wow.
Yeah, it's really a cool system. So they were getting much, much better results than just relying on, say, the down conductor technology in it. So that's maybe if you guys got AMI, I can send you the paper if you're interested in cool. What they did. But because it doesn't cost you anything. You already got the system in place, right? So just leveraging your assets more efficiently is something.
The situational awareness, we're going to continue to get better about weather and insights and data in the camera. So I think just technology is going to evolve. The solutions that you explain, we're going to see more of that coming on. And just part of our plan is to be ready for those changes because things are going to change every year because we're all going to get better at this.
I think you're right. You know what? Maybe a funny little thing is when I started in this business, it's like I'd say all the action was always in transmission, right? And I look to where we're at today, and it's like all the action is in distribution.
Absolutely.
It is such an exciting place. So if anybody's thinking about being an engineer, be an electrical engineer, and go work in distribution systems, it's exciting times. Lots of technologies, lots of different kind of skills you need. It's a great place to be. Thanks so much for taking time to talk to us today. I'd love to have you back on at the end of wildfire season to discuss how your innovations helped mitigate wildfires.
I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
All righty. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for stopping by Schweitzer Drive. Join us again as we learn about, explore, and celebrate electric power. For more information about the show, please visit selinc.com/Schweitzer Drive.